Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Trey Olds Radio Show. Thank you for joining us today. Today, my guest is actor and acting teacher, Mr. Greg Mullavey. Thank you, and join us in a minute. Okay, my first question to you is, how did your career begin? How did you become an actor?
God. Well, believe it or not, somebody dared me to do an audition here in New York, and I did, and I got the part.
Mm-hmm.
And so that started my career. It was Our Wilderness, Eugene O'Neill's first play. I mean, not only comedy, rather. Not first play, but only comedy. And I played Richard. And it was a lot of fun, and I liked it. But I really got interested when I was in the Army. I hadn't done anything. In college, I did a little bit of review work. I kind of song and dance stuff, which is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, and I liked it. And my girlfriend at the time was an actress. She played Ophelia in Hamlet. And but I wasn't that interested. I did other things in college. I was president of my fraternity. I was a Sigma Chi. I was editor of the college newspaper. I was president of my fraternity. I was captain of the baseball team. I did a lot of stuff like that. And I come from a baseball background. My father was a baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
He played for the White Sox and the Red Sox briefly. And then he was in the minor leagues for many years in Buffalo, New York. And that's where I was born. And he's in their Buffalo Bison Hall of Fame. He has a lifetime batting average over 300. And my dad then became a coach for the Dodgers, both in their organization. So as a kid, I grew up around baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I moved at one time when I was six. I moved to Jamestown, New York, which is about 60 miles southwest of Buffalo. And my dad managed the team there, and I was the bat boy for a while, and it was just great fun. So I wanted to be a baseball player, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hurt my knee in the Army, and while I was in the Army, I was originally I was drafted. I didn't want to be in the Army, but I got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And so I originally was in a group, a top secret group. I got a top secret clearance. I was doing this stuff that had to do with Russia. Can't really talk about it any more than that. I'm not supposed to. But anyway, aside from that, my dad got me out of that outfit, and I got put into special services because he knew the coach of the team, of the Army team, at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and that's what I did. I started playing baseball in the Army, and while I was doing that, gave me a job doing special services. And I did a play.
Mm-hmm.
And called Snafu. It was an Army play about World War II. And it was great fun. I loved it. And so I started on weekends going into New York to see theater. And I fell in love with it. I really, really liked it. And thought, well, this is something I might want to do when I get out. And sure enough, I did. And that's what started me, really. And I did that play. And then I started studying in New York. I went to the theater school for 2 years. And I studied with the disciples of Sanford Meisner, and also with Lee Strasberg. And then I went to L.A. and went to continued studying there, and I started working out because my father was then a coach for the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. And my family had moved to Los Angeles, so I made my home base in L.A. And lo and behold, I started working.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Wonderful, that's great. And before I continue, thank you for your service. Thank you for serving in the Army.
Well, you're very welcome. I didn't do a whole bunch. I didn't, but on the other hand, if Russia had invaded Europe at the time, I was sent to Europe finally, mm-hmm. and spent almost a year in Europe, and I played baseball there too. I didn't do any theater there because they weren't doing theater, but I was still interested. And when I got back, that's when I started studying. Mm-hmm. And I finally wound up in L.A. Got seen doing something there, and I wound up doing gosh, the first show I did was a show called, I think it was called You the Jury.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vallis and I were in it. And I had the lead, believe it or not. And the audience would phone in and vote about the ending of it. They had different endings.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first thing, and then suddenly I started working a lot. And then all of a sudden I didn't work for a while. The blush was off the rose, as it were. And so I got a bread job, which actors have to do. But then I started, I kept working. I did theater. And I got seen in theater. And I started getting jobs that way, through theater.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing theater all my life. I've done over 100 plays on Broadway. I started a Broadway play. 2 of them. That's all I've done. I did romantic comedy opposite Mia Farrow. And I then replaced Ron Liebman in Rumors on Broadway. And, I've done a lot of theater. That's what I love to do. I just turned down a job doing a theater piece here in New York. They wanted me to replace somebody in 6 days. It's only 6 rehearsals and huge long speeches. And I thought, no, I can't do that. I'd make myself crazy. And not for a lot of money. I've made a lot of money in theater, and I've made not very much money in theater. But not the amount of money you make. The work is the same no matter what you do, whether it's film, television, or theater. It's very similar, the work. And, my advice to young people, if you're not working at all, and you get depressed, or you can't find a job, or an agent won't hire you, do either student films, do that, or get into a theater group and start doing theater and try to get people to come and see your work, and or do scenes from it and use that as part of your reel.
Mm-hmm.
I did that, and I got work out of it.
Yeah.
And so when I teach, I also taught people and then coach people on scenes that they're doing that are good, or a play they've been in, and work on a scene from the play, put it on film, put it on the reel. I mean, these days there's a thing called EcoCast, like Actors Access. You're probably aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
where you put little clips of your work on the film, and even theater people look at it. They want to see what you can do. I got cast, by the way, in this play that I turned down because I did a Zoom meeting with the director. Mm-hmm. So much because of the pandemic is being done on Zoom, and you can use it to your advantage, and just have them then go, let them go see your EcoCast stuff or your website. And these days everything's digital, so you've got to get very, very good at that and put it up on your website and make yourself a website. I say that my website's not very good. I've got to redo it because I have film that I've got to put up there, but I haven't done it yet because I'm not very good at it, and I've got to hire somebody to do it. But either do it yourself, learn to do it yourself, or find somebody to do it for you. But you've got to have the films. Mm-hmm. And that's theater, too, these days. Just the way it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got off the subject of my beginnings. But those were my beginnings. And I did go to a theater school for 2 years. And then I studied independently with Eric Morris.
Mm-hmm.
I studied with Eric off and on for 7 years. I still go to a class, and I'm an old guy, and I still go to a class. A friend of mine has a class when I go to LA named Alan Feinstein, who's really terrific, by the way. And I go to his class. We're very good friends. We did The Price together at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, although we'd known each other before. He did Stanley Kowalski on Broadway in Streetcar, Alan Feinstein. So he's a veteran actor like me, and he teaches, and I go to a class. I teach too. I teach at State University of New York, here in New York at times when they want me. I also have taught for years privately at a place called Michael Howard's here in New York, and I've taught in LA too for many years, and coached a lot, and I still coach. Mm-hmm. And I'm still learning. it's a lifetime of learning being an actor, and it's great fun. And those of you who have passion for it, unless you have fire in the belly for it, I advise people not to do it because it's hard. You get a lot of rejection, and you got to be okay with that. Have a thick skin and a sensitive nature, and that's hard. That's a hard combination. But if you love it, then you got to do it. If you just love it, that's it.
Absolutely. You have to have the passion for it. You have
passion for it.
This business is not for everybody. You know, I started in voiceovers and I did theater, and I started when I was young. I was 13 or 14 when I started in theater, and then switched to radio, which I do now, and I'm 21 now, so 8 or 9 years I've been in the business so far, and I love it.
Oh my God, you're almost a veteran already. 21. Whoa, Trey. Yeah. Well, congratulations. You've got the wherewithal to stick with it. Good for you. Good for you. But you're 21, so you got plenty of time ahead of you. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. And it keeps, even when you get old like I am, and I'm a working actor, I've been a working actor almost all my life, and I've managed at times a very good living, other times not so good, but, you know, I have a pension now, so I can pretty much live off of that, and a pretty decent life. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, the days of the middle-class actor who's a working actor. If you're a star, that's another story. You become a star. And you have to get lucky. It's like winning a lottery to become a movie star. And become one of the millionaires who, like we just saw in the Academy Awards. I'm a member of the Academy, so I vote. Mm-hmm. I'm very much shocked by Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. I mean, that kind of behavior just... And I think our board is going to not look upon it with as much grace or compassion and forgiveness as perhaps some people would like, because you can't behave like that in front of 15 million people. And the world is... Because people aren't going to look at two millionaires having a squabble on TV, and it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. But that's a whole other issue. Controlling one's emotions in front of an audience is something you've got to be able to do. You know? Anyway, we'll digress into that. But as a member of the Academy, I disapprove strongly with the behavior. It's just not the right time to do it.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of what was said. I mean, unfortunately, there is some sensitive stuff that comics, because it's a style that's been developed over the years at the awards. Ricky Gervais has been much worse than that. Other people have been equally as perhaps insensitive to other people's plights and make fun of them. If you can't, in the spirit that is given in as a kind of jostling of people who are super famous, then you've got to find a much thicker skin than taking offense. It's like a roast. Mm-hmm. Remember Don Rickles in the roast they did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, such awful things were said about people. It was done in good fun, but vicious fun, kind of locker room humor. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of... anyway, blah, blah, blah. But I advise people to keep at it. Keep at it. Pick yourself up when you've been slapped down or felt slighted because you've been rejected. And you get depressed and think, oh, my God, I'm not that good now. Just keep getting better. You know, just like an athlete. Try to get better. Try to get better at it. Keep working out. And somebody's going to say yes. They will. If you're good and you've worked hard at it, somebody will say yes. Enough people will say yes so you have a career. I mean, I'll be a good example of that. I don't give up easily. I get knocked down. And I figure, what am I doing? This is stupid. You know, I'm too old, I'm not right, I'm not handsome enough, I'm now old. But there's always a part for you somewhere. There is. And you just got to keep looking for it and make a career out of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you may not make a lot of money, but I know people still who are at it who haven't made an awful lot of money, who do have side jobs still. And yet they still persist. So those are the people I most admire, not your movie stars so much.
Mm-hmm. You have to be persistent. That's one thing in this business. You have to be persistent and not have an ego. Have an ego to a certain extent, but don't be persistent, but don't be cocky, you know.
Yeah, absolutely right. And when you're down, for example, I'll give you an example of what I tell my students, and I tell myself too. So when I get a role, and suddenly I'm on a callback, say, for example, they liked me, I've done the first audition, they liked me, now I'm at a callback. So I've got to remind myself that I'm good. The pressure's now more on you when you get a callback. So I have to remind myself of all the good stuff I've done, all the accolades I've gotten on reviews, et cetera, to make myself feel excited. I change the narrative from nervous to I'm excited. The inner narrative in your head. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In other words, God, I'm nervous. I wish I wasn't so nervous. But to more, I'm excited. I'm excited, and that's energy. So now I put the energy in what I'm doing in the scene, what my intentions are, what I want in the scene, what perhaps my emotional life is, or whatever it is, and what might spark me. So I get involved in the story as becoming more important than my being nervous. And I attend to my tasks. I give myself certain inner tasks to do, to focus on. So now I'm more involved in the story of the scene. And now I go to do the work I've got to do to make myself involved in the story. Mm-hmm. So I enter the world of the story. And that, focusing on that, and then the excitation of the excitement of doing the story becomes more energy to be useful rather than to sabotage your effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have to make the character your own, the role your own. You know, you have to be that character.
Yeah. Yes. I'm the guy. Mm-hmm. And you are. And because there's nobody else auditioning, just you. So you got to look at you. And that's you. Mm-hmm. But you use that part of you that fits the story, that fits the moment, that fits the circumstances of the imaginary circumstances of the play, the television show, or whatever. And sometimes they don't give you enough information, so you make it up. You make some choices. Mm-hmm. They're good. If nothing else, there's what I call KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Yes, keep it simple, silly, or stupid, depending on the nature of yourself. And it's not rocket science. And you don't make it so important that it becomes such a large task to get approval. And doesn't mean you should be indifferent, but focused on what you're doing. What do I want? Why? Playing the why is awfully important too. Why am I doing this? Why am I in this? What am I doing? Mm-hmm. You know? Begging for forgiveness. What do I want? What am I doing? What's the intention? Larry Moss, who's Hilary Swank's coach and Gandolfini's coach, has a book about exactly that. Larry Moss, mm-hmm. Which I highly recommend. And Eric Morris's books, too, are very good.
Yeah.
And Meisner's book is very good. So a lot of books to read that will help you.
Yeah.
With that. You know, he works with the guy from the Green Mile. Mm-hmm. I forget his name. The guy who was nominated for the Academy Award. And he worked with him, and he broke through with him, finding out that this big, strong, muscle guy was a bodybuilder, had a very vulnerable childhood, and he found that those vulnerable parts of him he could use in this role, and he did, and got nominated for an Academy Award because of it. So you got to know yourself very well and what your triggers are.
Absolutely.
Also, a lot of self-inquiry. So life as an actor is great fun because you walk around and ask, how am I feeling today? What's going on? How do I feel about that? Oh, that's useful. Let me see. How do I feel about just walking down the street and everybody? Oh, how do I feel about my friend Joe or my friend Sam or my girlfriend or my parents? A lot of plays are about family. whole bunch of plays and stories are about family. Every soap opera is about family.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing Mary Hartman, it's about family. And so frames of reference, your own family. I mean, what was it, 5 Easy Pieces, I think it was, that Jack Nicholson wrote the foreword to one of Eric Morris's books. And we did an exercise in class talking to your parent, father, mother, sister, brother, or friend. We do an improv talking as if they were there about an issue that you might have with them. And he got nominated for an Academy Award for that scene with his father.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd done stuff like that as easy as eating a piece of pie for him, because he had worked with his own parent enough to be able to come up with the emotional life that was appropriate for him and fit the circumstances of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember also, speaking of people not working and being depressed and not getting discouraged, I once had dinner with Jack, before class at one time, with Jack, Dennis Hopper, Harry Dean Stanton, myself, and another actor named Bruce Morris, who gave up acting. He was a terrific actor, too, but gave it up. Became a Buddhist monk. It's not a bad idea. He got rejected for a movie and decided that's what he wanted to do. Anyway, Jack hadn't worked in 2 years, and Dennis was talking about the movie he was going to do. And the movie was Easy Rider. He said, Rip Torn's not going to do it. Maybe you want to do it, Jack. And Jack did it. Have you seen Easy Rider?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Nick's scene, what he does when he does that thing with his arm, and lo and behold, his career took off after that. Hadn't worked in 2 years.
Yep.
So they're always around the corner. There could be something glorious that can happen. So that's why I tell people, don't get discouraged. Because, yeah, when I feel, oh, man, nothing's happening, my agent hasn't called me, nothing's going on, suddenly I get a call. Or some serendipitous thing happens. You know, like you meet somebody. You're not going to meet anybody if you sit by your phone and don't get out. But I'm doing a play, and then somebody comes and sees it, and lo and behold, I get a call. Why don't you audition for this, too? So lo and behold, yeah, things can happen. Every time I do a play, I get work in television or film. Mm-hmm. Every time. Almost every single time. So staying busy keeps you also involved with the process of growth as an actor. That's why I recommend doing theater, too.
Mm-hmm. And I also recommend, do all what you can in this business. If you do theater, go into film and television. Learn all the assets you can,
Absolutely, absolutely. Do commercials, too. Hell yeah. If you can do voiceovers, do those. I've done all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't do it anymore because it just... I haven't done a commercial in a long time. But I don't need the money anymore, and it's not important to me. I'd rather do theater or film or television. Mm-hmm. But I don't need the money. But if you do, certainly try to do that, too. Every avenue, explore. And do get out on Facebook. Do keep yourself out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to use all the social media you possibly can these days. Unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. It's more of a difficult time for actors because now, whereas before you would go in for an audition, they have a camera there and they have a casting person there, and you do the read with them. Now you've got to have all the equipment yourself, and it's increased because of the pandemic. Things are being done on either Zoom and or eco-casting, they call it, which is you have to have your cell phone or iPhone or whatever it is, your Samsung or whatever it is, and a little tripod, you put that on, and a light ring, and a place in your home or apartment where you can do curtains in the background they want. Like curtains, and you have a little studio that you do auditions in. And you have to have the equipment. It's not that expensive, but you have to do it. Amazon has all that stuff. You can just go on there and get the equipment. And then you have to have somebody read with you, I think. People do sometimes do it themselves, and it's too hard.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have somebody read with you. You just have to. Now, on the other hand, there are people that do this. Like I have friends of mine that do it, that you can go pay like $60 or $80 or even $100, depending on the coaching you get from them, and or you get made up too if you want. But that costs more, and you do the audition that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessary. Most people don't do that because it's expensive, but you can do that. People do it, and they also they coach too. Some of them.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, you've got to be able to do it, and then you've got to get film for yourself. That's the other thing you've got to do. Do student films. Do a monologue. I did a monologue from the play that I did because they made it into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I did a play for the National Jewish Theater, and called the Stoat Myth.
Mm-hmm.
And we filmed it. It's in Holocaust museums throughout the world, and I'm Irish, so but nonetheless, I played a lot of Jews, and so I sympathize with their plight, especially in World War II. And I used that as part of my reel, and I also used it as in the EcoCast.
Mm-hmm.
You have clips of work you've done in the EcoCast, so the casting person, if they want to go look at it, they can. You have to ask, and you can figure out which ones would be more appropriate for the role you're playing. Like I have a recurring role on iCarly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your audience may know who iCarly is, or that show that was done. They took a 10-year hiatus. Now everybody's 10 years old in the Paramount Plus version of it. I just did a new episode a few months ago. It'll be on this month or next month. But I have an episode of the original production that I did 10 years ago on the EcoCast thing and on my reel.
Mm-hmm.
So you can also do that once you get some work, and or whatever film you get. Make sure as a student, or when you're starting out, make sure that when you do a student film, you get the film, or get the video of it, and put it in writing if you possibly can, and have them sign it. So if they don't give it to you, oftentimes they forget and they get busy and they don't give it to you. So you got to make sure you get that.
Mm-hmm.
But use it, especially if it's good and you like it. Put it on your reel and have it available for casting people to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a piece of advice for
Absolutely.
people who are starting out.
Yeah, most importantly, you have to love it and have the passion for it. You know, it's...
Yeah, you do. You really do. Because otherwise, you get discouraged too easily. You say, well, I'll just try this for a while and see if I like it. Just see how, maybe I'll get lucky. Mm-hmm. Well, you could get lucky, but the odds are you probably won't. If you don't have passion for it, you won't stick to it. And so you're just going to skim along for a few years and then drop out. Mm-hmm. I've had that happen to many people, students that get discouraged. And they said, well, and I get it. Because in the beginning, for most people, you're not making a lot of money. It takes, Hollywood used to say, it takes 5 years to start to get to work enough so you can make a living. That has to be a rule of thumb, generally speaking. But, of course, there are exceptions to every rule. And there are people that get lucky right away. And there are people that don't get lucky until they're middle-aged. Mm-hmm. So it depends. But theater is always available, especially if you join a theater group. You'll start to get to do some plays. And I recommend that people get into a theater company ASAP. That has dues, maybe, but that's part of the process. Mm-hmm. They're usually rather inexpensive. Like, I belong to an experimental theater group here in New York, and other people do too, and it's very expensive. $25 a month.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. Or you can, auditions like for the active studio, and maybe try to get into something like that. Your dues are minimal at best.
Mm-hmm.
And then start auditioning for the plays against Actor Studios. Barely does plays, but they do them. Because you do scene work there, and you get seen. That helps too. It's not easy to get into, though, I must say.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are others that aren't as difficult to get into, and I highly recommend that you try to do that. I'm a member of a couple of theater groups in L.A. when I go out there, and I still support them. So the journey is one that you must have, as you say, Trey, have passion for. You have the tools, but getting better at your craft is so important. Because, when you're not getting cast so much, maybe it's you. Maybe you're not as good as maybe you think you are, and you have to get better. And that may entail studying with a coach or a teacher. You may have to go to class. I still go to class.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing this for a long, long time. But when I'm in LA, I go to this acting class. I don't do that in New York. Maybe I should, but I don't. But I audition a lot, and I work at it. And on Zoom, I've read plays. I do stuff. And I highly recommend that. Get in a theater. Get in a group. Even if you're still doing Zoom. Get in a Zoom group that wants to do plays. Every so often, my lady and I had people over and we'll read a play. Marlo Thomas is a friend of mine. I did a play with Marlo a few years ago. And I don't know if people know Marlo Thomas. She's a little older too, but she, as I am, so you may not know her. Mm-hmm. She's a spokesperson for St. Jude Hospital.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You'll see her on TV every so often. She's on The View a lot. And her father, Danny Thomas. But Marlo had her own TV show many, many years ago called That Girl. Mm-hmm. And she's very active. And, we read a screenplay that she wrote along with a friend. And Elaine May was there helping her too. And so Elaine May is one of her best friends. And we do stuff like that. Read people's work. And or decide, get your friends over and say, hey, let's read this play. Let's go read some Chekhov tonight. Why not? Let's do it next Sunday. And maybe we'll do it on Zoom. And ask people to come and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do The Seagull. Or we'll do... okay. We'll do... some Tennessee Williams. We'll do Streetcar Named Desire. Or we'll do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe this week we'll do... maybe we'll do Hamlet. That's pretty ambitious, but nonetheless. Why not? Why not? Have friends over, make a little party, buy a little party afterwards. Bring some wine, and we'll read a play. Or one act.
Mm-hmm.
Read 27 Wagons Full of Cotton of Tennessee Williams and stuff. It's fun. Mm-hmm. Or one of John Philip Stanley's plays, or whatever. Contemporary stuff that young people like.
Mm-hmm.
So you keep yourself busy, keep yourself growing, become a better auditioner. There's a science to that. You have to be able to read, take it off the page, especially if you haven't learned the words. Unfortunately, these days they want you to learn it. So improve your learning skills. Your memorization skills. There are little tricks to that. You can begin to perfect. What do they say in French? Repetition, repetition, repetition. Meaning, keep repeating a damn line over and over and over until it's like a prayer. You don't have to worry about it so much. And learn your cues. I still have to remind myself to learn the cues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have to work hard at it. One of the reasons I turned down this play was because there were tremendous monologues, like 8-9 page monologues, at the beginning of the play, in the middle of the play, at the end of the play. And in 6 days, I couldn't learn it to my satisfaction. I do know some people who have a photographic memory. They're rare, but they can. They can learn something very, very fast. I'm pretty fast. I've done a play in 10 days, but not with long, long monologues like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. And I decided I would do myself a disservice. I would do the play a disservice by saying I could do this. I would have to go on book. I'd have to have my book with me. I'd have to have that. Mm-hmm. And there was no, even with multimedia, this play had, that they could project it on the walls of a small theater. Mm-hmm. Well, either I do what Al Pacino did in a play that he did here in New York. He had a thing in his ear and they were feeding him the lines. Mm-hmm. But they didn't have the resources to do that in this small theater that I was going to do this experimental play with, and with the group that I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, there are times you've got to say no. And there are times when you've got to say yes, especially when you're young, and take a chance. And you can be scared and still do it. And my advice again is when you're scared and you're nervous, just say, this is energy and I'm excited to do it. That's why I'm feeling excitement. And you change the narrative in your head and suddenly that energy is useful to you and not sabotaging. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So anything else you want to know? Like, what's the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks? It's a lot. You better make some money. That's the other thing you got to do. Get a bread job. If you're desperate for money, get a bread job. Find something to do. A lot of people in here, I was a waiter, did that. When I first started out, I was also in the theater school that I was at. I stage managed plays, and I lived in the theater for a while, because I was really without much money. My funds were limited. So I lived in the theater. They had wardrobe. I made myself a little bed. And I stage managed the plays for no money. But I also stage managed them because I paid part of my tuition. Mm-hmm. But that helped a lot. So all those kinds of ways to try to get some dough so you can survive. Waiting on table is one of them. There are others too that are part-timers. There's a lot of part-time work in the economy now. Mm-hmm. Don't get paid a lot, but nonetheless, just keep yourself together enough so that you can exist and pursue your craft. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully you'll get lucky enough to start making a living. And eventually do what I do. You teach, coach, you do commercials, you do voiceover work, you do whatever you can do to make a living. Mm-hmm. And put enough together to kind of to make it okay, so you have some money in your little pot so you can survive for a month or two. That helps too. Mm-hmm. Being thrifty rather than deciding you need a new car. Mm-hmm. Or that shiny new suit, whatever the hell you think you need. And I shop at secondhand shops for clothes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But if you love it, as you say, and you're passionate about it, you've got to do it. There are ways to make a living, and there are ways to keep at it until you score. Now, if you decide you've got to be a movie star or you're nothing, then I suggest you don't even begin. Mm-hmm. Become a working actor is not all that difficult. It really isn't. It's just you've got to keep at it. Persistence, as you say, is the key. Persistence and not getting discouraged. Finding ways to stay positive about yourself. It's really important, because keeping self-esteem high for an actor is difficult, because you're not getting as much approval as and we need approval. And actors usually need to be loved by an audience. And if you don't love yourself a lot, you got to work on that. I suggest people learn meditation too. It helps a lot. Mm-hmm. I use the Calm app a lot, and I'm also into Deepak stuff. But I mean, whatever spiritual journey you may or may not be on, meditation is a very good tool to have for an actor. Calms you down, find a centering yourself, and becoming more and more okay and getting to know yourself really well. What helps you to calm down, what helps you to get through a difficult journey at times without falling apart is something that people have to cultivate in themselves. Mm-hmm. So a lot of self-knowledge is important for an actor, finding out what your triggers are, and also meditating or some way, either through therapy or whatever you think you need to help yourself become more integrated, more able to face hardship and overcome them, and work through them without too much emotional discomfort. Mm-hmm. So whatever will help you do that, I suggest you explore. And make it fun. Make it fun. The journey is fun, and have a great sense of humor about yourself, too.
Absolutely.
That really helps. All these things are easy to say, sometimes difficult to
difficult to do.
To do, yeah. That's very true. And so, as you say, persist, persist, persist. Pick yourself up. Okay, I got knocked down. I'm feeling bad today. Maybe I'll feel better tomorrow, but I'll come back. I will. Mm-hmm. With that, you'll begin to cultivate a certain kind of toughness, so you're not so overwhelmed by being rejected. That's part of the game. Mm-hmm. Part of it. Next. Next. So you didn't get the TV show that you wanted, but there will be another one. You think there won't be, but there will be. There will be. Maybe it wasn't the movie that you had in mind that would have made you a star. Well, I'm wondering if that's ever going to be able to happen again anyway, because it's so a disparate number of shows that are being streamed now. It's very difficult for somebody to get into a hit movie that everybody wants to see. Mm-hmm. Even Coda, I don't think is going to attract that many people on Apple TV. So the audiences are shrinking for movies, and there's some doubt whether movie theaters in their present form will be a viable way to continue to have blockbuster films. Well, blockbuster films are a whole other ballgame. The kind of films work is really, really good and not subject to digital manipulation. But I don't know whether Marvel comic people, the people that are doing those films, become big stars. The movie is the important thing, and the digital effects, correct? Mm-hmm. But then the people in them, even though the people in them may gather a modicum of fame, but not the panache that movie stars have today. But that's beginning to wax and wane. But there will be work. There will be work. Mm-hmm. And so the working actor is going to take a bigger place in the pantheon of so much work out there. There's a lot of work out there. But it's not paying a lot. I'll give you an example. I just did a kind of a mini pilot / short film with David Cross. Your audience may or may not know David Cross. He's a comedian. He was on Arrested Development on another show called Joe, SHOW, capital letters. He's a late-night comedian. He's on late-night television a lot with Colbert and people like that. He's a club comedian. He worked clubs throughout North America and Canada. I mean, North America is Canada's part of North America. And he works in Europe too. So he's a well-known comedian in those circles. I didn't know him, but I looked him up, and sure enough, he was somebody I had seen before. And I did a little mini 22-minute film with him, about 22 minutes, which is the same size as a television half-hour comedy, 22 minutes, between 20 and 22 minutes. There's a running time of a half-hour comedy for TV.